Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the heart of Ashwood, a modest town nestled between rolling hills, an uneasy calm hung thick in the air. Life in Ashwood was typically untroubled. Mornings began with the smell of brewing coffee wafting from local diners, and evenings faded into the sounds of crickets serenading the twilight. Yet, this tranquility was about to be shattered by an event that would ripple through the fabric of the community. It was a crisp autumn morning, the trees dressed in vibrant shades of orange and gold. As the sun peeked over the horizon, illuminating the quiet streets, 18-year-old Clara Bennett prepared for another day at Ashwood High. Clara was well-liked and known for her infectious laugh and a smile that could light up any room. But little did anyone know that this routine day would mark the last anyone would see of her. When I returned home that evening, concern began to bloom among her family, friends, and the tight-knit community. Well, her mother, Mary, frantically called her friends only to discover that none had seen Clara since she left for school. By nightfall, panic coursed through the Bennett household. A chilling realization, settling in something was terribly wrong. As darkness enveloped Ashwood, the quaint town was plunged into a state of fear. Police sirens pierced the silence, and their blue flashing lights lit up the neighborhood streets. Officers were dispatched, combing through the town to find any trace of the vanished girl. Meanwhile, friends and neighbors vowed to scour the woods and fields, united in their desperate search for Clara. Little did they know, this search would lead them deep into a web of secrets, lies, and shadows. A dark chapter in Ashwood's history was just beginning to unfold. Victim. Clara Bennett was more than just a name on a missing persons report. She was a daughter, a sister, and a friend. Her life, albeit brief, was characterized by unyielding ambition and a genuine warmth. With her long auburn hair and freckled cheeks, Clara was a familiar face around Ashwood-served coffee, with a smile at the local cafe, volunteered at the animal shelter, and spent her weekends organizing community events. As a senior at Ashwood High, she had dreams of becoming a veterinarian, influenced by her love for animals and her childhood pet, Max, a golden retriever who had passed away the year before. Friends described her as the glue that held their group together. They would often gather at the small park on Main Street, sharing laughter and secrets beneath the sprawling oak trees. Clara had a knack for bringing out the best in others, encouraging them to chase their own dreams while never wavering in her pursuit of hers. Her best friend, Mia, remembered late-night study sessions and countless inside jokes, emphasizing how Clara could light the darkest rooms with her presence. As the investigation began to unfold, Clara's absence struck a profound chord within the community. Missing person flyers plastered on telephone poles bore her smiling face, while candlelight vigils hosted at the park drew hundreds of mournful participants. Each flickering candle illuminated the shared hope that Clara would be found safe. But there was an unmistakable edge of fear weaving through the air. Detective Adrian Lawson, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for tenacity, began poring over Clara's life. He interviewed classmates, teachers, and community members, seeking out any piece of information that might offer insight into her disappearance. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Clara had been leading a life intertwined with the complexities of adolescence, the friendships, the rivalries, and a few hidden struggles that would soon unravel amid the search for the truth. The crime scene. 3 days after Clara Bennett's disappearance, the search intensified, fueled by a collective urgency that gripped the town of Ashwood. Mornings turned heavy with anxiety as reports streamed in of possible sightings. Evenings were spent in frustrated anticipation. Then, on a chilly, overcast morning, the call came in. A jogger had discovered something alarming just off the beaten path in Cedar Woods, a dense stretch of forest on the outskirts of town. Detective Adrian Lawson arrived swiftly, the early fog rising from the ground as he stepped out of his cruiser. Cedar Woods, often a sanctuary for runners and families, now stood still and foreboding. Lawson felt a chill creep down his spine as he approached the scene. Uniformed officers secured the area, warning curious onlookers to stay back while forensic teams began their detailed examination. Positioned within a small clearing, a fallen tree created a natural barrier. Amid the tangled underbrush, partially obscured by autumn leaves, lay Clara's belongings, a pink backpack headed with patches of cartoon animals, and a silver locket that belonged to her mother. A collective gasp pierced the air as every pair of eyes became fixated on the grim discovery, instincts flipping from hope to despair. Lawson stepped closer, observing the ground, his trained eyes catching subtle details. A faint trail of broken twigs led deeper into the woods, and scattered leaves hinted at a disturbance. An unsettling sense of dread tightened in his chest as he gingerly examined the area. The backpack seemed untouched, but the realization dawned on him that Clara may not be far from here. Had something sinister happened in these quiet woods? As forensic experts combed through the scene, documenting every detail, Detective Lawson's mind raced, piecing together leads that had emerged over the last few days. He knew that the answers lay hidden in the shadows, and as the sun rose, cutting through the veils of fog, an undeniable sense of urgency fueled his determination. With Clara's family and a grieving community waiting for answers, Lawson felt the heavy weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. A race against time had just begun. The early investigation. As the sun rose over Cedar Woods, Detective Adrian Lawson convened a meeting with his small team, each member acutely aware of the gravity of the situation. Together, they scrutinized the map of Ashwood, tracing Clara's last known movements to school, the friends she visited, and the route she often took home. Conducting individual interviews had revealed fragments of Clara's life, yet the puzzle was still missing key pieces. The first major lead emerged from Clara's friend, Mia. During their conversation, Mia revealed that Clara had seemed distant in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Once effervescent and cheerful, Clara had often retreated into herself, grappling with a troubling breakup that left her confused. Mia recalled a heated argument between Clara and her ex-boyfriend Ryan just days before she vanished. Though Ryan was well liked in their social circle, Mia sensed a shadow looming over him. Jealousy and insecurity had seeped into their relationship, but she couldn't fathom the consequences of that turmoil. With this fresh information, Lawson's focus shifted. He arranged to interview Ryan, who had reportedly spent the night Clara went missing at his home. Lawson wanted to gauge his demeanor, hoping to discern any hidden truths behind Ryan's charming exterior. The detective's instincts told him this encounter could reveal crucial insights. Meanwhile, the forensic team continued their meticulous work in Cedar Woods. The remains of a broken bracelet, adorned with colorful beads, were recovered from the senior piece of jewelry that Clara often wore. This discovery weighed heavily on Detective Lawson's mind, amplifying the urgency for answers. Each finding felt like a breadcrumb leading him deeper into a labyrinth of potential motives. As news of Clara's disappearance spread throughout town, fear and speculation stirred among residents. The atmosphere became charged with rumors. Whispers filled the air about shadowy figures lurking in the woods and past relationships gone awry. It became clear to Lawson that he needed to navigate not only the investigation, but also the growing tension within the community. Clara's absence was no longer just a tragedy, it was a crisis that threatened to pull Ashwood apart at the seams as they all grappled with the troubling possibility that someone among them could harbor dark intentions. The early stages of the investigation had unearthed not only Clara's secrets, but also the fragile veneer of trust that held Ashwood together. The dead ends as days turned into weeks. The initial hope of Clara Bennett's safe return waned. Detective Lawson felt the pressure mounting not, but from the community, whose trust he was striving to uphold. Each piece of information that surfaced promised a lead, but often turned cold, leaving the investigation spiraling into disillusionment. Ryan, Clara's ex-boyfriend, initially cooperated with detectives. His demeanor seemingly genuine, he recounted the events leading up to her disappearance, claiming he had spent the night at home, oblivious to Clara's struggles. His alibi checked out as his parents corroborated his story. However, something about Ryan's tight-lipped expressions and evasive responses nagged at Lawson. The detective decided to dig deeper into Ryan's background. He found that the seemingly charming teenager had a history of temper issues, often veiled beneath a veneer of charisma. As Lawson pursued other leads, evidence of Clara's whereabouts continued to elude. Investigators canvassed the local high school, gathering statements from classmates, none of whom had seen her after the argument Mia mentioned. Surveillance footage from a nearby convenience store revealed nothing just unexciting glimpses of shoppers and no sign of Clara. Amidst the chaos, another lead emerged, but it faded just as quickly. A local drifter, known to frequent Cedar Woods, had been spotted near the area around the time of Clara's disappearance. Officers tracked him down, only to discover he had long since left Ashwood and headed south, a specter vanishing into thin air. Each fleeting encounter seemed to close off more avenues rather than open them. Frustration saturated Lawson's interactions with the community meetings, where anguished family members spoke of their sorrow. Demanding answers he struggled to provide. Desperation seeped into every conversation, further fracturing a town already hanging by a thread. Despite the detective's commitment, the haunting reality that Clara might never be found loomed over them like a storm cloud, pervasive and chilling. As Lawson returned to his office one night, an overwhelming sense of defeat washed over him. He stared at the evidence board, a disorganized collection of photographs, timelines, and witness statements each, a twisted thread in a web that threatened to suffocate the truth. Questions about something? Had he overlooked something? Was there another avenue he hadn't explored? And in the midst of this uncertainty, the specter of Clara's absence grew ever larger, a void that echoed through the very heart of Ashwood. A break in the case. Just when the heaviness of frustration threatened to overwhelm Detective Adrian Lawson, a flicker of hope illuminated the shadows. It was an unremarkable Tuesday morning when a voice crackled through the radio. An officer in a nearby town had found Clara's phone discarded in a ditch near the highway, miles away from Ashwood. Lawson's heart raced as he received the news. He felt adrenaline surging through his veins, a spark that reignited his determination. He coordinated with the officers on the scene, asking them to safeguard the device while forensics initiated an analysis. This discovery felt like a potential turning point, an opening in the thick fog that had shrouded the investigation. Once the phone was retrieved, it was taken to the local evidence lab for immediate examination. Forensic specialists scoured through it meticulously, looking for texts, calls, or any clues that might shed light on the events leading up to her disappearance. They soon found a series of messages exchanged between Clara and an unknown number, which stirred a curiosity in Lawson. The texts hinted at a clandestine encounter, one that Clara had planned for the day she went missing. Detective Lawson knew he had to uncover who had been messaging Clara. With the forensic team working to trace the number, he redirected his focus back to the students of Ashwood High, hoping to identify anyone Clara might have been in contact with, who remained unknown to her friends. Hours later, a name surfaced: Jake, a quiet senior known for his skill on the wrestling team, who had recently transferred to Ashwood. Mia remembered Clara mentioning him in passing. He was described as enigmatic and somewhat brooding, an outsider who hadn't fully integrated into the social scene. Lawson decided to bring Jake in for questioning. As the clock ticked away, anticipation built within him. This was more than just another lead. It was the promise of unraveling a fragile thread that might connect the disjointed aspects of Clara's final days. Laws seeking the truth now danced in his mind, his resolve hardening like the steel of the badge he wore. The answers lay at his fingertips. With the phone's potential lead and Jake's name creeping into view, the investigation was finally poised to shift, unveiling the intricacies of the case that had enshrouded Ashwood for so long. The suspect. Detective Adrian Lawson sat across from Jake Peterson in the small interrogation room, the air thick with tension. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, illuminating the sharp angles of Jake's face, which remained stoic. Curious eyes seemed to betray an underlying restlessness. A nervous tapping of his foot against the metal chair echoed in the silence. Jake Lawson began, leaning slightly forward, adopting a tone that blended authority with empathy. I understand you might not know what this is about, but we found some messages on Clara's phone, and we need to discuss your possible connection to her. Jake's eyes darted before locking back onto Lawson's, his breath catching momentarily. I haven't talked to Clara in a couple of weeks. We were just friends, he stammered, but his voice lacked the confidence he tried to project. Alarm bells rang in Lawson's mind. High recognized the telltale signs of someone withholding information. Over the next hour, Lawson skillfully guided him through the topics at hand. He learned that Jake had recently developed a mild infatuation with Clara, sharing moments of camaraderie in school that morphed into a deeper friendship when Clara expressed a desire to wrestle with her feelings following her breakup with Ryan. Did she ever mention meeting with you? Or anyone else? Lawson probed further, noticing Jake's apprehension deepen. She was planning something specific on the day she went missing. Jake fidgeted, his fingers running through his tangled hair, revealing underlying anxiety. Yeah, she asked me to meet her that day, but I got cold feet. I didn't show up, he confessed, his voice faltering. I didn't think it would be. Why didn't you just tell anyone? Lawson interjected, pressing to unveil more. "You must have known Clara was struggling. She was going through a tough time." Jake's demeanor shifted, a flicker of defensiveness revealing itself. "We all have problems. Okay. I didn't want to make things worse. And I didn't think she'd actually go through with Edie. Thought she wanted to talk." The detective studied him, considering the weight of his words. What if this encounter they had planned had gone wrong? What if Jake's cold feet had led Clara into danger? The thought hung heavily in the room, the evidence now coiling around Jake like a serpent. Lawson asked him about his whereabouts the day Clara disappeared, pressing for specific times and alibi. Jake's story remained vague, riddled with gaps that seemed to form a pattern of uncertainty. While he maintained his innocence, the unease emanating from him made it difficult for Lawson to dismiss the growing suspicion. As the session drew to a close, Jake's lips tightened into a thin line, his walls rising higher. Lawson had unearthed merely layers of a façade that now begged further scrutiny. The detective stepped out of the room, shaken yet invigorated, his instincts sharpening. He needed more evidence to tie Jake deeper into the narrative of Clara's disappearance, and he was determined to find it. Even as the gaps closed in and around the young man enshrouded in mystery. The trial. After months of uncertainty, the trial of Jake Peterson began on a bleak day in late spring. The courtroom was packed, a mixture of anxious townspeople, family members, and reporters, all waiting for answers that had eluded them for far too long. Clara Bennett's absence loomed heavy above the proceedings, a shadow that enveloped the room. Everyone had questions about the young woman's fate, and Jake was at the center of this storm, a figure both feared and pitied. As the judge took his seat and the gavel struck, the atmosphere tightened into an electric stillness. The prosecution, led by the zealous district attorney, painted Jake not just as a suspect, but as the embodiment of an unrelenting darkness that had overtaken a beloved community. They recounted the messages discovered on Clara's phone, laying bare the emotional turmoil that drove Clara into seeking solace in someone she thought understood Heronly to be betrayed by someone who claimed to care. Witnesses took the stand, including Maya, Clara's best friend, whose emotional testimony struck a chord with everyone present. Mia recounted the last days of Clara's life, the palpable pain and confusion that marked her final moments. Her anguish poured into her words, forcing the jury to see not only Clara's disappearance but the impact it had on those left behind. Tears glistened in the eyes of those who knew Clara, the heart-wrenching edges of hope snuffed out by grief. But the defense was just as determined to unveil a different narrative. They positioned Jake as a vulnerable young man, not a villain, but a confused boy caught in a tangled web of adolescence. They painted the picture of an infatuation that spiraled out of control and claimed that the messages Clara had sent were ambiguous, misinterpreted by both parties involved. The defense argued for reasonable doubt, suggesting it was possible Clara had left town voluntarily, reflecting her need to escape after the pressure of her previous relationship. As the trial unfolded, each testimony became a knife, cutting deeper into the collective heart of Ashwood. Detectives Lawson and his team presented their findings meticulously. In this dance of justice, questions were peppered about the motivations behind not only Jake's actions, but the nature of young lover, precarious tangle, frequently misunderstood. Throughout the trial, Jake sat silently, his expression oscillating between stoicism and despair. His future hung in the balance as whispers surged through the courtroom. the weight of Clara's fate resting uneasily on everyone's shoulder. The jury deliberated, weighing the fragments of evidence against the desperate cries for justice, echoing in the memories of Clara's laughter. After long hours, the verdict was finally read. A single word that shattered the fragile hopes binding the audience room clung to the pulse of time. Jake Peterson was found guilty of manslaughter, an outcome that would forever alter the fabric of Ashwood. Despair washed over the courtroom, mingling with relief that at least some measure of accountability had been delivered. As the gavel struck again, sealing his fate, the lingering question remained: would this verdict bring peace to Clara's family? Was it merely a small relief in the ongoing ache of loss? For Ashwood, healing was still a distant dream. The memory of Clara Bennett, the lasting reminder that many stories remain unfinished, even as justice attempts to weave the final threads together. The aftermath. In the months that followed the trial of Jake Peterson, Ashwood struggled to find its footing amid the ebb of collective grief. The once vibrant town felt muted, a shadow of its former self. Clara Bennett was gone, and while justice was served in some eyes, the ache of her absence lingered like an unshakable specter. Each corner of Ashwood, the bustling cafe, the high school gymnasium, the park where Clara's laughter once danced in the air now wore a veil of sorrow that transcended the physical absence of the girl they loved. Detective Adrian Lawson spent countless hours reviewing case files in the aftermath, revisiting every detail of Clara's story. Though Jake had been convicted, the void left by Clara gnawed at him. Every successful case brought closure, but also its fair share of ghosts. He was haunted by the notion that justice had still not fully embraced the pain that hung over her family. Lawson attended support groups held for families who had lost loved ones to violence, seeking not only solace for himself, but a way to connect with those who understood the depths of heartbreak. Clara's family struggled to navigate their new reality, attending therapy sessions to help shield each other from spiraling despair. Mary Bennett often gazed at the empty chair at the dinner table where Clara used to sit, the weight of silence echoing through their home. Family outings felt hollow, memories of Clara cascading over them, filling the air with unfulfilled dreams. Determined to honor her legacy, Mary established a scholarship in Clara's name, aimed at supporting students who aspired to work in veterinary medicine, believing that her daughter would have wanted to help others, even in her absence. The community rallied to support the scholarship fund, a heartening reflection of the love Clara had shared with so many. Candlelight vigils became a regular occurrence, drawing citizens together to remember her vibrant spirit, to share stories that invoked smiles even through the tears. These gatherings reminded everyone of the importance of solidarity, healing through collective remembrance. But the shadows cast by Clara's case were never far behind. Some residents felt deep mistrust, grappling with insecurities about their own safety and the relationships they had once taken for granted. They exchanged glances filled with caution, unsure of who they could confide in, as fear crept silently into their hearts. For Detective Lawson, the healing process felt slow, a battle of inner reconciliation. He wanted to believe the town would come together, to thrive beyond the tragedy. But the complexities of loss continued to blur the lines of hope. The town had transformed into a palpable reminder of lingering pain of loss, mixed with the fragile threads of recovery, one that would weave through generations to come. With each passing day, bruised yet resilient, Ashwood began to heal. Clara's laughter echoed through the winds, a reminder that even in the darkest chapters of life, love would find a way to endure. The investigation into her fate had unraveled the threads of a community bound by tragedy, yet also bound by hope, a long-term journey toward understanding, remembrance, and ultimately a quest for peace. Reflection. Seasons turned in Ashwood, and though the leaves of autumn painted the town in splendid hues, a lingering heaviness settled within the hearts of its residents. Time, that relentless tide, moved forward, yet Clara Bennett's absence felt like an unwavering shadow, tugging at the edges of daily life. As winter approached, the first frosts left a crisp chill in the air, a bite that seemed to mirror the cold void left behind. Detective Adrian Lawson often found himself gazing at the photographs that adorned the walls of his office, smiling faces of families, friends, and communities whose lives had been irrevocably altered. Clara's sweet smile remained central among them, an emblem of loss and sorrow, but also of resilience. He pondered the route that brought them here. The threads of fate that intertwined lives, the fragility of existence resting on inexplicable choices. The community began to reshape around Clara's memory, embracing the scholarship as a legacy that would nourish future generations. The discussions surrounding mental health, relationships, and the impacts of grief opened avenues for connection that had once been stifled. Clara's story became a catalyst for change, transforming pain into purpose as school counselors started programs to address emotional well-being among students, encouraging open dialogues about struggles many faced in silence. As he drove through Ashwood one evening, Lawson noticed a makeshift memorial at the edge of the park, a gathering of flowers, notes, and photos of Clara. It bore witness to the ongoing heartache, but also the unwavering community spirit. Clara's spirit seemed to linger, calling out to him, urging him onward in his quest to uncover truth and foster compassion. In reflection, Lawson understood that while investigations might bring closure, it is the connections forged in shared grief that sow the seeds of healing. While justice might serve the community's need for accountability, the greatest victory lay in compassion, in remembering those like Clara who touched lives and prompted change long after they were gone. Each moment spent looking back illuminated the way forward, a bridge spanning between sorrow and hope, binding the community in a delicate tapestry of love, remembrance, and a relentless pursuit of understanding.